Remember the 2013 horse meat burger scandal? The fact that your lunch had previously been well fancied at last year's Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe? The one that wiped out burgers, lasagne and cannelloni from our supermarket shelves? Well, after a 6-year investigation, 2 French men and 2 Dutch men were convicted in 2019 and shared jail time and suspended sentences between them. We didn't escape scot-free. 2 Brits and a Dane were also convicted at the Inner London Crown Court. It was one of the biggest food adulteration scandals in history and involved about 750 tons of horse meat, millions of binned ready meals, the involvement of 2 respected French food firms and a tortuous chain of events taking in Romania, Poland, Belgium, Canada and Holland. Point is, the corrupted meat originated in the EU. And a little bit from Canada, where Cheval à la mode is no stranger to restaurant menus, and it slipped, apparently unknowingly, into Europe's food chain, largely in France, where it was distributed by 2 big firms. 3 criminals over here clearly played their part, but with full knowledge of the criminal acts they were committing. The dodgy animal husbandry and failures of systemic checks and balances was really mainland European. So, the idea that somehow British standards of husbandry suddenly collapsed as Brexit arrived at the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve while the EU's are somehow the global gold standard is as wrong as it is insulting as it is unlikely. But that is what is being alleged today. The mayors of the French ports of the Channel and the North Sea are calling for the creation of something called a European Health Coordination Force dedicated to quality control of food products imported from Great Britain. Apparently, according to the administrators of the port cities, EU initiatives are needed to protect imported goods, as there is evidence of a dumping strategy that the British government seems to want to promote. How they arrived at this spurious conclusion is a touch unclear, and given that most EU imports are currently in a car park in Kent, as gleefully pointed out by one woefully misnamed EU diplomat, it is difficult to see quite how anything is being dumped anywhere. But let's not let our actuality get in the way of a good story. We cannot have doubts about the quality of our food, the high-minded clique of local, national and EU representatives said, which, frankly, would carry more weight if, as previously mentioned, France hadn't been at the heart of the last big pan-European food scandal. They really don't seem to like us, do they? You know, our friends across the channel. And no, I don't mean every French person. I mean the authority figures, the elected and non-elected representatives from mealy-mouthed Macron downwards. It's very dispiriting. I love France. I love its people and their joie de vivre. I love Paris. Who couldn't? I love its wine, its laid-back lifestyle, its Côte d'Azur, its history, its haute couture, its Camus and Sartre, its Monet and Manet, its love of liberté, égalité, and fraternité. God, I even love its football team. But its politicians suck. I've concluded they suffer from some sort of collective Stockholm syndrome. I've often felt perplexed that after Britain gave everything to help out a mate across the channel who was being bullied by Germans, and she did this twice, the French politicians then went running back into the arms of the people who had been racing pantsers up and down the Champs-Élysées for 6 years, while the rest of the world was in 2 minds over whether to allow Germany back into the human race. De Gaulle couldn't jump in das Bett fast enough, while doing everything he could to trip post-war Britain up. Stockholm syndrome. And yes, I know that was then and this is now, and the world is a very different place, and Germany is now genuinely the very model of a modern progressive nation state, but it's still baffling. It's said that after the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the survivors did not hate the Americans but loved them. In some awful Orwellian way, the sheer display of untrammeled power broke minds a little bit. Maybe this is what happened with France and Germany. Whatever it is doesn't half seem to refuse to go away. Today, after 4 years of Mr. Barnier trying to teach us a lesson, we find yet another raft of faceless French bureaucrats trying to trip up post-Brexit Britain. Plus car change.